like to try high gain pitch 212, yaw 37, over.
Roger, I think I got you on high gain now.
Roger.
You got anything left here? Okay, sequence camera coming on.
Welcome to the Internet Space Program.
I forget how epic that is.
That was excellent.
It's hard to follow that up. Ryan does a good job of just making it very, very hype.
Also, we'll do what we can.
Yeah, we'll do what we can. Very honored to be with you, Andy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm just quickly going to read off a bio, and then we'll jump straight into it.
Sure.
So Ryan's prepared this for me. Thank you so much, Ryan. Dr. Andy Aldrin is the CEO and president of the Aldrin Family Foundation, where he leads efforts to inspire the next generation through space-based STEAM education, reaching over 300 schools and universities. He's also served as the executive director for space programs at Embry-Riddle Worldwide, home to the largest graduate space studies program in the world. Andy has a background that spans academia, industry, government research, and he brings deep expertise and passion to the past, present, and future of space exploration and education. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kick this off. I think last time that the two of us spoke, it was late in the night at one of the New Worlds conferences that Rick puts on, and we started talking about the geopolitical situation on the moon. Why was it so critical? What is the sort of reason that the United States should go there? How quickly should we go there? And I'm curious if you could share a little bit of your insights on that question, because I know that you also studied geopolitics for a very
I did.
an active role as a CEO of a couple organizations. So I'm curious how your thoughts have kind of evolved on that question.
So it, the big issue with the moon is uncertainty over its commercial value, combined with some real estate issues that are there. And what it creates is a situation of which is kind of unstable from an international perspective. So here's the situation. You've got parts of the moon that are like the Mojave Desert, roughly. I mean, it's desert, and you can buy a square meter of desert in the Mojave Desert for 35 cents a square meter. Then there are these little choice bits. We don't know, but we think that on the poles, you've got craters that are permanently shaded and have lots and lots of literally gigatons of water ice. But they're in craters, and they're sort of isolated. We don't really know how many of these have water. We don't know how usable the water is. We don't really know how to extract it. There are a lot of things we don't understand. And then you combine that. So what you have is 99.99% of the moon is the Mojave Desert. And then you've got these little bits that are kind of like, they're very precious real estate. It's sort of like, I did a little research on this, and I found real estate in Hong Kong, a parking garage, ironically, that sold for $1 million a square meter. And so you've got 35 cents and $1 million, and it's a pretty huge disparity. And that's kind of what we have on the moon. So the race is to get to the precious spots. Here's where the whole thing gets more interesting is, So let's say if you land on the moon, and we're getting more and more data on this. When you land on the moon, you spew out a bunch of regolith, and it goes at a very high velocity for a very long distance. And so there's a legitimate concern if you land somewhere that's anywhere near someone else, if there are people in there, you're creating a real safety hazard. So irrespective of international law and space law, you have a legitimate claim, I think, that where you land, you're entitled to a certain safety zone. What we're learning now, that safety zone may be as large as the entire crater, depending on where you are. And so now what you have is a limited number of craters that may be very valuable. They may not, because we really don't know this. But if you think that they are valuable, whoever gets there first, with probably a human presence, it's probably not good enough if you put robots there and somebody else lands, you can say, oh, well, you might damage my robot. And people go, okay, sorry, send me the bill. But if you've got humans, now all of a sudden it's a very different deal. So what you have then is, again, irrespective of space law, a legitimate claim that you can make by landing on a crater, and you're sort of encouraged to land in a vulnerable position, that you have a safety requirement for being informed of and having approval over anyone landing in an area that you think is dangerous. So what that sets up now is a competition to establish a presence on as many spots as you can. And that kind of a competition, the obvious competitors on this will be China and the US, whether they're commercial companies or not, because under space law, there really are no commercial companies who are representatives of a country. And they will be representatives of China, representatives of the United States. There might be representatives of Russia and India. We don't really know. If it's the US, it'll probably, if it's Europe, it's probably going to be part of the Artemis Accords. And so that kind of looks like a US leaning alliance, if you will. And so what you have is a sort of geopolitical conflict, the potential for a geopolitical conflict on the moon. And that's never a particularly good thing. I happen to think that I think the US is far better positioned in the sense that when we go to the moon, there will be government missions that'll go to the moon. But if there is, I think, a real potential for useful water, ice, or other minerals on the moon, you'll see commercial companies going there as well. And so I think that the US is probably in a better position to proliferate the number of craters that you might occupy. But it's a super unstable position. And there are answers for this. And I think there's an agreement right now. It's called ATLAC. It's not an agreement. It's sort of something that's being negotiated within the United Nations Committee for the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. Actually, the USA branch of that. And it's sort of a notification regime, which says that if you are going to land on the moon, you have to notify people that you're doing that. And that's a good start. But as we know, space law is something which is sort of voluntary, and there really aren't enforcement mechanisms. And so that just strikes me as an opportunity for geopolitical conflict. That's about it. I'm not saying it's the end of space exploration. In fact, the irony of it is perhaps that this potential for conflict would encourage one nation or the other to get as many settlements on the moon as soon as possible. And so that may be a good thing for sort of getting the government to support commercialization of the moon.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I saw, I think it was Phil Metzger who's done the studies on lunar regolith and how it shoots out up to 20 kilometers out. And, these are shards of glass at super high speed.
I think Phil has got some new stuff that's coming out. I'm not sure it's been published yet, but there's some really, really interesting stuff that's coming out that supports that basic position.
Yeah. So if I guess if China shows up and says, hey, we're going to be landing here next to all of the choice bets, as you put it, then what does that mean for the US? And right. I'm curious. Do you think it's just the water ice? People also talk about the helium-3, and do you think that's more speculative? Do you think there's
actually, what the point is almost the uncertainty. If there's certainty, in some ways, we would know we're going to go there and we're going to do stuff. But with uncertainty, that kind of creates an interesting problem from a sort of options trading standpoint. You want to protect the option if it's the option that, in fact, resources on the moon, regardless of what they are, will be very valuable. Now, the obvious one is water, and the obvious place to find water is at the bottom of craters. It may be that, just as a hypothetical, you might find a limited number of very large nodes of, we'll just call it rare earth metals or something like that, since that seems to be a hot topic these days. And maybe you would have the same competitive problem. The point is that whatever you're going to find is likely to be distributed really sort of unevenly, and maybe as long if it's close enough together where you have two spots that might present a danger, I think there's potential. But the ultimate point of it is we do not know whether any of this stuff is worthwhile. We don't know if you can make money mining anything on the moon, because just as a matter of fact, you've got to transport it. First of all, you got to transport your equipment to the moon. You got to transport it from the moon to low Earth orbit or the Earth, and that's something that's going to cost. I did some rough calculations, and it's something like $1,500 to $2,000 a kilogram to move something from the surface of the moon to low Earth orbit using a Starship derived return vehicle, and that's a lot of transportation costs. I mean, you can get something from the surface of the Earth to low Earth orbit for a lot less than that, likely. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it's about that. Call it $2,000 if you're using the Starship. So these are interesting things, and it is not a slam dunk that it makes sense to mine stuff on the moon. It may well be. If you're mining something on the moon and you want to take it to geosynchronous orbit, because it costs so much more to launch something from the Earth's surface to geosynchronous, sort of $6,000 a kilogram-ish. Now, all of a sudden, $6,000 a kilogram is the minimum price that you could sell something from the moon in geosynchronous, which is a lot better than $2,000 a kilogram. So, I mean, even at just the most basic calculation, if you can't cover your transportation costs, you can't sell anything. And so we don't know that yet.
Right. What do you think about these ideas of say using the lunar regolith in order to construct other say like at the Lagrange points where you have maybe settlements or these or whatever you want there's already a ton of material out there on the moon. So if you learn if you have some sort of railgun type mechanic and you can just get it off of the moon really easily, then that opens up a lot of other interesting places you could go or things you could do, or do you see that as kind of more far off? Maybe. Well,
railguns are probably more far off. The physics of a railgun work a lot better off of the moon than they do off of the Earth. You don't have an atmosphere. You've got a lot less gravitational force to overcome, and so ultimately that makes sense. But that's probably only going to do what you can do is throw stuff into some kind of a lunar orbit, but even that. Is going to be a little bit problematic just because the moon is the gravitational field of the moon is kind of uneven. So you can't just throw something on a ballistic trajectory and hope that it's going to be stable for a long period of time. But that kind of stuff makes sense. And it makes much more sense if you're trying to build something the closer to the moon that you are. So as I said, just using a chemical rocket like a Starship, the cost to get to low lunar orbit is, I don't know, it's pretty cheap though. And to get to an L1 it's not that much more energetic. There isn't that much more delta V beyond the 3,000 meters a second it takes you to get to from the moon's surface to low lunar orbit. So in those cases, I absolutely think that there's potential for, well, let me put it a little bit differently. In those cases, it will be much cheaper to draw your resources from the surface of the moon than it will be from Earth, just from a pure transportation standpoint. So yeah, that makes sense. But as I said, the real market that we all kind of talk about right now is fuel and the place where you want to buy fuel for most customers is going to be low Earth orbit, and that's going to be a tough one. If what you want to do, for example, is stop by somewhere in the weak stability boundary region between the Earth and the moon and pick up fuel to go to Mars, it makes a lot of sense, because that's a really expensive place to get stuff to. And so, yeah, refueling Mars missions are great, but how many Mars missions are there? And they only happen once every 2 years. Now, if you if you imagine a world in which thousands of people are getting shipped to Mars, and this stuff makes sense. I try and look at things that are a little bit higher probability than that. But anyway, yeah, it's really kind of a function of where you need stuff. And so, for example, space-based solar power, setting aside for a moment the whole question of whether space-based solar power works technically once you have something up there, and that's something that people dispute, it would be, in all likelihood, far cheaper to get your raw materials from the surface of the moon to geosynchronous, because it's so expensive. And actually the cost of transportation is probably, I haven't done a lot of work on space-based solar power, but it's probably the vast majority of the cost to put platforms out there, because you're talking about literally tens of thousands of kilograms in geosynchronous orbit. That's a lot of mass. And so if you can get that from the moon, where it costs you, let's say, 20% of the cost as it would to get from Earth, then that may make the business case make sense. You may even want to produce structures on the moon, because one of the cool things about the moon is you don't have an atmosphere. So you don't have the tyranny of the launch fairing. We've got to fold everything up into this sort of origami satellite thing. And so, yeah, there are visions out there that aren't, that really aren't crazy, but they require a lot of things to happen. And I think before you sort of invent a business where you're creating space-based solar power by getting stuff off of the moon, you got to think through all of the stuff that has to happen in order for you to get to that endpoint. And those are conversations worth having. Right.
Well, and I want to go back a little bit. So you were involved in Moon Express, and I'm curious if you could walk us through the history of that, what the goals were. I also find it very interesting the whole prize model that was around it too, with the Google Prize. I'm curious if you could walk us through some of the history.
I can talk in general terms about it. There's stuff, proprietary stuff about companies and things like that I probably have to avoid. But the whole thing started with Peter Diamandis going to Google and saying, let's. This was shortly after the Ansari X Prize, which was a tremendous success. It was as X Prize goes, it was very successful. They awarded the prize. They did something. It took, that was what, 2000, 2002, and we didn't actually start flying things for another 20, 22 years. But at any rate, there was a prize, and it actually, I think, helped to kickstart things. So the idea was, let's do that for the moon. And initially, when we were doing that, the United States was going to the moon, and it kind of made a lot of sense that we'll get private industry to spend money and innovate and develop systems to go to the moon. Well, sort of halfway through it, we decided we were going to go to Mars, and that didn't help the whole Google Lunar X Prize. But there are companies that were still plugging along at it, and I was invited to come and run Moon Express, and it seemed like it was too interesting and cool of an idea. I knew there wasn't an obvious business plan, but there's some things that you could do that did make a lot of sense. And so we took a shot at it, and I think the timing was all just almost exactly wrong for prizes. But what we ended up with at the end of the day was a few companies that had developed lunar capabilities or were working on lunar capabilities. And then the U.S. government said, just kidding, we're going to the moon now. And so then NASA started saying, look, we'll help you out in some way with this. And NASA offered to provide technical support. And those were all good ideas. So when we finally got to the point where we launched the CLIPS program, you had a bunch of companies, not a bunch, you had a few companies that had done some work in this area and burned on some of the technical risk. And so it made the addition of the marginal effort to get from where they were to actually a credible design that they could fly and bid on missions for NASA a lot shorter than it would have been otherwise. So I mean, that was kind of a good thing. Well, it was a good thing, but I think the challenge was they were still basically asking in the private sector to take all of the risk and take all of the risk in terms of not just the cost risk. You know, you build your spacecraft, your lunar lander, and then maybe NASA will pay you. But the revenue risk, which is that NASA was not going to guarantee you a number of missions as they did in the case of commercial resupply. You know, they said they were going to, I forget, it was like 40, they guarantee 40 tons a year, something like that, of upmass. And so, you know, you had a market. In the case of CLIPS, it wasn't really a guarantee of anything. And that's industry has typically been willing to accept cost risk, sometimes irrationally, because we, as a species, when it comes to large programs, we suck at cost estimation. We just do. It's not space. It's anything, bridges, tunnels. We're just not very good at estimating costs. Nevertheless, industry is willing to take on cost risk. What they are not willing to take on is revenue risk. Or let's say, I won't say they're not willing to take it on. It's a much tougher nut to crack. And if you, you know, there's a great example that has nothing to do with the moon. The Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle Program, EELV, back in 2000-ish. The Air Force came to industry and they said, look, we'll give you $500 million, to develop a launch vehicle, and we'll fly you. We'll fly this launch vehicle, and it'll be great. They didn't really guarantee anything. And $500 million was not nearly enough. Boeing and Lockheed each spent in excess of $4 billion on these programs. And instead of the 40 launches, I was at Boeing at the time, instead of the 40 launches we expected, we got 4. And when you size a company, a project for 40 units a year, and you only have 4, you've got all of this fixed cost. That was just a disaster. And so in that case, industry took on both revenue risk and they took on cost risk. And they wrote down billions and billions of dollars. It was a bloodbath. And of course, the government then restructured the contracts. So the government took all the risk. And that was just as unhealthy a situation in some ways, because the government didn't care. Whatever money they could get to support them. And that, of course, created the opening for SpaceX, which was probably a good thing for everybody but ULA. Unfortunately, I was working at ULA at the time, but anyway.
So yeah, that's interesting. I guess like in your telling of the story, it seems like one of the critical factors is just that the U.S. kind of wanes in its focus, or says, okay, we're going to the moon, and then halfway through is like, okay, now Mars, and now okay, we're back to the moon. And I guess could you maybe expand on that problem a bit, because like the thing that I see, for example, on a geopolitical scale, is that China doesn't have that problem. They just have their one thing, and then they can move in that one direction. The United States, being a liberal democracy, does have these issues, but this seems to cause us to shoot ourselves in the foot. We have a lot of problems promising things to private industry, and being steady on those promises over a period of time that's required to develop these programs. I'm curious if you can maybe take that ball and go wherever you want with it. But
yeah, I'm going to run in 2 different directions on this.
Okay.
So the first thing I'm going to say is I began life as a Sovietologist, and I wrote my dissertation on how the Soviet Union beat the United States into space. And it's ironic. The reason the Soviet Union beat the United States into space with Sputnik was they were better entrepreneurs. And it's actually a great story that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But after that, it became obviously a top-down system. It was very different. But the Soviet Union even with a top-down system, had a lot of competition between the different design bureaus over where they were going to go. And actually, after the U.S. decided it was going to the moon, they had a bunch of competition amongst people. And one of the reasons they didn't do very well in the lunar program, I mean, they tried, but they had at least 3 different design bureaus building their separate lunar programs. In some ways, they were being more capitalistic than we were because they had competition, whereas we focused all of our resources. Now, if you get to the U.S., the problem we have is we have new administrations which come in, as you pointed out, and have different ideas. And so, how far do we need to go back? So let's just go back to, if you go back to Clinton and you go to Bush and then you go to Obama and you look at it, with the change of administrations, it's dramatic. You just see how these programs getting canceled, new programs getting started. And there are kind of 2 things going on. One is Republicans and Democrats had very different views of space. Republican parties tended obviously to prefer spending money on space science, planetary, whereas Democratic administrations want to spend money on Earth observation. With human spaceflight, Democratic administrations seem to spend more on technology development, whereas Republican administrations we're going to go this way. The interesting thing that really came up is, after Obama and the Obama administration it was 2009 for the 2010 budget, they proposed basically killing off the moon programs, which are the Bush programs. Bush had the vision for space exploration. Obama killed those programs and said, we're going to develop technology and we're going to go to Mars. And in fact, there was that great moment at Kennedy Space Center where my dad was with Obama, and Obama said, been there, got that T-shirt, done that. And been there, done that, got that T-shirt. I think he even said those words. And that was a change in policy. But what happened is Congress said, no, wait a minute. We got jobs for these programs. You're not changing anything. And what happened in that particular case is the White House said, okay, you know what? Space just isn't that important to us. You take it on. The moon program is now your tar baby. And so the Senate took it on. And then there were, all kinds of messy things going on. And we kind of ended up with what became SLS, as some people call it, the Senate Launch System, because it really was kind of driven by senatorial politics. The interesting thing was Trump came in and didn't really change it the first time around. And we expected change. And then Biden administration didn't really change anything. They may have taken their foot off the gas a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, the program really had momentum at that time. And so now in this administration, the first thing that comes out, the president's budget is, no, we're going to cancel all this stuff. We're going to Mars now. Just kidding about the moon stuff. Well, now, I mean, we're starting to see, I don't know if it's the Empire Striking Back or what, but Congress is saying, no, wait a minute. It's not, you can play around with killing Earth observation programs. We're fine with that, which I think, by the way, that's not a very good policy anyway. I mean, it's a one program. Science in general is the one thing NASA does really, really well. And the one part of science that actually has application on the Earth is Earth observation. And so that doesn't make a lot of sense to me to cut it. Nevertheless, Congress doesn't really care enough about that. And they're not in the right political districts. Who cares about Maryland anymore? But what's happening with the rest of it, you're actually seeing more money getting pumped into human space flight. And I think the Congress is saying, no, you're not ending SLS after Artemis 4. You're going to go on. We're going to commit you through Artemis 8. And so we'll see what happens. But it almost seems like once you get past a certain threshold, your program is probably going to be successful. And we saw this. The shuttle wasn't that hard because there wasn't anything else to do. And people sort of believed in human spaceflight and the myth of what the shuttle was going to do. But the station had near-death moments. And in 1992, it came one vote away from being canceled. Ironically, what saved the space station program was bringing Russia into it, using the notion that we were going to save the world from Russian missile and atomic scientists by having them work on the space station, and that got the program through, which is all great. The problem was the people that we paid to do the space station work had nothing to do with rockets. It had nothing to do with any kind of defense activities. NPO and Ergia was purely human spaceflight, and that's where all the money went. Well, some of them went to Khrushchev, but Khrushchev is the same thing. Anyway, there are problems with U.S. attention span, but it's more complicated than just saying that if you've got a centrally directed system, you can necessarily maintain control over things. And I will say I don't know a lot about China, but the structure of their defense industry looks a lot like Soviet industry. And I suspect you have competition between different state-owned enterprises or branches within state-owned enterprises. And China is spending a ton of money and they're being very successful at space endeavors. But my own view of it is Chinese state-owned enterprises are among the least efficient enterprises on the face of the planet Earth. And if we can't outcompete those people, then we deserve to lose the battle. The competition with China is going to be really interesting, but I'm a little bit more skeptical of the 10-foot tall Chinese taikonaut.
Yeah, I think the thing that worries me is more that China's manufacturing capabilities are so much greater now than the United States, and I've seen these kind of scary graphs too, where their energy production has it's going up exponentially compared to the United States energy production, which
energy production is just, China isn't producing energy, they're buying energy, right? But if you're talking about energy utilization, China is going up. But if you look at energy utilization on a per capita basis, I don't have the figures in front of me, but I promise you, U.S. energy consumption on a per capita basis is massively higher than China. And so, we saw this with the Soviet Union. We see it with most industrializing nations early on, as you're, sort of hitting the steep part of the curve in industrialization, extensive industrialization. You're just pumping more money and investment into things. You do see massive rises in things like energy consumption. What's getting surprising and disturbing about China is they're outpacing us in a lot of areas of science. And in part, we're doing that because we're kicking out all the Chinese scientists who may have different motives. I don't know. But the fact is, we kicked out all the scientists. And what China did was they said, all right, fine, we're just going to create our own universities. And some of the universities in China are now maybe not as good as U.S. universities, but they're catching up. They probably won't ever catch up completely, but we basically encourage them to develop their own higher education system so that they didn't need to come to the U.S. And I would much rather have the best and the brightest from China, from India, from Mexico, in the United States, studying at our universities. And most of those people are going, you know what, this is pretty cool. I like it here. I don't really want to go back to Russia. And that would be a really good thing for the United States. So that's just kind of a policy that I look at and scratch my head.
Right. Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said that, companies can swallow costs, but when you start playing with the revenue, that makes it very difficult. So, I guess it's easy to talk to investors and say, here, this is how much this thing is going to cost us. And here's your rate of return. Here's how much revenue we're going to make. But if they lose a contract or something like that, then it makes it very difficult to tell that whole story. And so that gets me to this question. Okay, right now the government is kind of the customer for a lot of space, but now we're talking about a cislunar economy or private industry being each other's customers, and how do you do that economic development? How do you get those relationships moving? I'm curious what your thoughts are on cislunar economy? Do you think that what percentage of the customers today are private industry, and do you see a shift happening, or do you think that's maybe just our hopes and dreams? Do you think it'll always be the government? Do you think that there's room, or because there's nothing really there on the lunar surface today? So how do you bootstrap this lunar economy?
Yeah. So I mean, the short answer is I don't have a clue. And that's important. No one has a clue. If they're telling you they got a clue, then you really need to be skeptical about what they're saying, because there are just so many sources of uncertainty. And I really think an area that I've played around with, and I think we really need to bring smart people around a table, so to speak, for more than a day or two or a workshop, to start thinking about what are the roadmaps from where we are to a self-sustaining lunar economy. And I don't care where the customers are. And this is not, engineers are great at roadmaps. They basically say, we need this technology, then this technology, then this technology, and you give me more money at each one of these steps, and it's a straight line. And you don't need a roadmap for that. You need a speedometer and a gas gauge. But I'm talking about a roadmap because there are tremendous intersections, or a tremendous number of intersections that, just as an example, do we end up in a competition with China for presence on craters or something, as I was discussing before? If that does happen, that means we go in one direction. If it doesn't, it means something very different. Are we able to solve the challenges, and there are real challenges with in-space refueling and creating a sort of in-space infrastructure that allows us to use spacecraft that you don't have to launch from the Earth? Because what the kind of spacecraft you want to launch from the Earth to space is very different from the spacecraft you want to go between here and the moon. But there's a bunch of stuff we need to learn how to do to make that work. And there's just a whole series of those questions that you have to kind of line up, and you have to figure out how you connect those dots, and what happens when you get to an intersection and the stoplight's red, And I think that we need to figure that out, because otherwise we're just making stuff up.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think, and it's surprising to me that there isn't a. I feel like I have seen some examples of like these technology roadmaps where they're like, okay, we need this and this, but yet it doesn't really feel like there's kind of like a canonical version of it, or like a mainline. Okay, these are our plans. This is what's going on.
Well, there was, and it's still out there, the Integrated Space Development Plan that a bunch of guys created, and it's literally wallpaper. It's that big, and without naming names, people came to me at one point. I was at Florida Tech, and they said, we want to teach a course about this. And I said, well, what I want to know is what happens if you get to this little circle and what you say is going to happen doesn't happen. Now, what happens to the whole thing? Well, no, you have to have all of this stuff. And, so there's been, and they put a tremendous amount of work into it. And it's probably as close as you'll get. I mean, it's old at this point. It's probably as close as we have ever gotten to creating the sort of roadmap. But what nobody did was the hard work, which is you're assuming all this stuff happens. It won't. What happens when different things happen, and how do the lights change it, and how do the roadmaps, which path do you take to get to where you want to go? And so there has been some work, but this was a few guys, smart people, just trying to figure out everything. But their assumption was kind of, we're going to put this out there and the government's going to pay for everything. And of course it didn't work out that way. But yeah, and that's, the share of government and industry risk taking is a critical part to probably every one of the intersections on this map.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was looking at the date. We're only 3 days away from July 20th, the anniversary of the Apollo moon landing. And so I guess you grew up with the kind of backdrop of Apollo, and had a front row seat to all of that. I'm curious, if you can just kind of tell us a little bit of the story from your point of view of the U.S. space program as you've seen it all the way, since the 60s to today.
I've never gotten the question exactly that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is I wish I knew. I wish
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing when I was, because where I lived, this was normal. Like our house was at the end of a street, so it was a pie-shaped lot there, 5 houses along the back. 3 of them were astronauts. So you couldn't swing a dead cat in my elementary school without hitting an astronaut's kid. So that was normal, and we just kind of lived with it. And I had tremendous faith in what NASA was doing, and I was very fortunate to grow up with my dad at the dinner table, because all he does, and not so much now, but for 60 years, all he did was talk about space, and so, one of the things that's interesting is I'm not a huge fan. It's not that I don't like science fiction, but it doesn't captivate me the way it does a lot of other people. And then I stopped and thought, I don't really need science fiction. I grew up with Buzz Aldrin. So, I mean, there's that element to it. I was always talking about this stuff, whether, I'm a Sovietologist at the time, and I ended up obviously looking at their space programs, but space was always just sort of bouncing back and forth inside my brain. And so maybe in a lot of ways there was less of the sort of mystery and fascination. Most of my friends in the industry, in fact, almost every one of them voluntarily became a space cadet, and that's great. I got drafted. And so maybe it's a difference, I guess, in that I always just grew up with it as being part of my life. And as I said, it wasn't like I wanted to become a Sovietologist just to run away from space. But the part of the Soviet Union that interested me most was their space program. But so that kind of growing up with the evolution of space was part of my life. And so, just an example, when I was probably in high school or later, just at the end of high school, no, it was probably just after high school. So my dad had this idea that you're going to fill the space shuttle full of passengers, fill the whole bay full of passengers, and they were going to go into space and have a great time. I don't know what they were going to do in there. But I mean, so he was one of the very first commercial space pioneers. I mean, he didn't have, ironically, his vision for the development of space was probably as comprehensive as Gerard O'Neill's. It just wasn't, it was more focused on going to the moon or Mars or specific programs. But so I kind of grew up with all of that stuff all around the house. And everyone was always very happy to support my dad and tell him his ideas were great. I was probably the person he heard, no, that doesn't make sense from more than anybody else. And I still do that today. Not just to him, he's not around so much anymore, but anyway, yeah. So that's kind of what it's about. It was an interesting way to grow up.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. Yeah, I guess it's hard to push back against Buzz Aldrin. I mean, like,
No, it's not.
you can.
That makes sense, right? He can't kick me out. Well, he could.
Yeah. Another question I had for you is, people kind of have this, okay, are you a moon person? Are you a Mars person? I know Buzz is a Mars person. It sounds like you're maybe more moon, but
lunatics and Martians is what I call it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where am I on that? I think the moon and Mars answered completely different questions. Mm-hmm. The moon is fundamentally about, will the moon help us create a self-sustaining economy in space where you don't have to take everything off of the Earth, regardless of who pays for it? It's the government, whomever. Is that going to, because I think that can fundamentally change what we do in space. And I think it probably is going to happen. We just don't know what parts of it, whether it's helium-3, whether it's just water. But I think it's a necessary, I'm probably more, well, I don't know if it's more, but the moon is about development. Mars is about exploration. And it's, while you can clearly make the case that if what you really want to do is determine scientific questions, you really don't need people there. I mean, it helps, but Mars is about some fundamental existential questions of humanity. You know, one of the things it tells us is about whether the human race can become multiplanetary or whether we're alone in the universe. And so if you go to the moon, when you go to Mars and you find nothing, and then you kind of wonder, maybe we are alone, maybe we are unique. I mean, it's still a sort of fantastic assertion given how big the universe is, but you kind of wonder. And then but if you do go there and you find something, even if it's just microbes that are 1 billion years old, it makes it fairly clear that, all right, there probably is life elsewhere. Whether we're ever going to see intelligent life is, to me, astronomically unlikely. Just the universe is so big. The closest places around are 100 light years away, and 100 light years is a long ways away. And we've been around for 5,000 years. We've been cognizant of anything. And the idea of in the 5,000 years of the 5 billion years we've been around, we're going to actually happen to be in the right place at the right time when somebody from a place that's 100 light years away happens to be in the same, I don't know. It just seems a little too crazy to believe in. But Mars tells us something about that. The second thing it tells us about is, can we actually survive on another planet? The moon doesn't really help you so much with that. I mean, you got to do a lot of the same stuff, but as John Young put it, you're 3 days away from a can of beans. On Mars, you're almost 3 years away from a can of beans. It's a big deal. You can't fake it there. You got to have everything together, which is one of the reasons it's so hard. And I think, the notion that we're going to be putting people there in 5 years or something, it is hard. It's crazy, the stuff you have to do. But I mean, SpaceX has done amazing things, but I don't really see any evidence that they've done any of the really hard stuff about life support, of human psychology. How do you get off of Mars? That's a tough thing. Anyway, I think they're both. I think it makes a lot more sense to go to the moon first, establish an economically self-sustaining presence, because NASA won't get off of the moon until somebody else is going to run it. And if we want to be on the moon, we got to figure out how to make money. And then we go on to Mars. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I broadly agree with that. I think that's kind of the trajectory that makes sense in my mind. Then it is interesting to see people like Elon, who I think is incredibly smart, say things like, "Oh, the moon is a distraction." Like, well, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of valuable insights that you'd get from going to the moon first, but I guess in his mind, it's just,
Hey, well, look, my dad is the same way. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I want to bring it back to kind of some of the stuff that we're doing here at MoonDAO and ask for maybe some of your advice. So I mean, at MoonDAO, what we're trying to achieve is to try to get people from different parts of the world to coordinate together via the internet to help finance missions, to help collaborate on them, and then help compete. So we want to. I mean, we've already done this. We've raised money to send 2 people to space. We've funded over 70 projects. We have a governance system via our online governance platform. What we want to do now is focus our financial efforts on a prize or on some kind of superlative that would inspire people, give people hope, and ideally get some of the best engineers around the world to compete on something very interesting that pushes us forward. I'm curious. I mean, that's a big demand, but what would you think, or would be something very interesting to help fund or to help put some engineering hours into, help inspire some young engineers in their basement, in their backyard to tinker with something and maybe have a breakthrough?
Yeah, well, so I don't think the problem is engineering. I think the problem is complexity. And I'll go back to what I talked about before. I think if one of the things that a group like yours could think about, particularly with your broad international reach, is starting to think about what this roadmap looks like. I mean, what are the key intersections? And then you can start drawing lines. And I think this is something where AI can play a role, but the key is going to be that it's AI and not AS, right? Because if you ask stupid questions, you'll get stupid answers. And so really thinking through what are the right questions and starting to build a community that's going to populate this. It's hard work, and it's there are real questions of, I think it's sort of a conversation that needs to start happening. But I guess if I were going to suggest something that your group might be well suited towards, it's figuring out, starting out with what are the real challenges, what are the risks, just talk about risks, make it easy. And what are the solution paths to those individual risks? What are the interactions between risks? And start to figure out now what are the intersections from where we are today to where we want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah. Well, I guess follow-up question: What do you see as a critical risk right now? Say in the next 5 years, short term. What's the sort of critical path where we could veer off?
Well, so I think that one of the biggest risks is overinvestment in application, underinvestment in technology. So not technology and infrastructure. So if you look at space investment, well over 75% of private investment is going into applications. In fact, if you look at Space Capital's got a wonderful website with an interactive tool to look at, like it's private investment, and it's a set of that. But they provide a really wonderful interactive tool. You can parse it out by types of systems, by infrastructure versus application, and there's something like $320 billion that have been have been invested in space over the last, I think it's 12 years or something like that. But of that, more than 300 billion is in GPS applications. And so what concerns me is, are we investing enough in satellites and infrastructure to provide the data that all these applications want? And the answer outside of Starlink, you really wonder what the investment from industry is. I mean, we've got a bunch of small Earth observations spacecraft, but if you look at it and government investment, think about this, that the US government space budget, if you include the national security, which obviously we can't talk about without shooting ourselves, but you can make up numbers that are fairly reasonable, is probably something between $70 and $90 billion. It's a lot of money. And the vast majority of that goes for hardware. That's just kind of the reality. But if we are going to back off from that into public-private partnerships and things like that, is capital going to get invested in hardware? Because the hardware business is tough. It is relatively low margins. I mean, in the space business and aerospace, you're doing really well to get 10%. If you're doing internet applications, you better be making like 40 or 50% margins. And so it's a tough investment. How do you make sure that we invest sufficiently in the future in hardware and infrastructure? And SpaceX is doing a great job of it. They've got a very interesting, money is cheap for SpaceX, and that's probably a good thing for everybody else. The question is, are they going to do the right things with that money so that they end up with something that's self-sustaining? That's another topic. But anyway, yeah, I worry about that kind of a risk, that we're not investing enough in hardware. We talk about it a lot, but and it's not clear how many of the hardware companies are really making money outside of SpaceX. And it's also not clear that SpaceX they're now valued at $400 billion. Do you have any idea how much revenue and what profit margins you have to be at to justify that kind of it? I've actually worked out the numbers, but I don't even want to talk about it because it's crazy. It's crazy. And what happens when people realize, hey, that 400 bill doesn't make sense? Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, people have this, well, I mean, you could draw from first principles this idea of like, well, there's a lot of resources out in space. There's plentiful energy. You don't have to deal with the atmosphere. So from first principles, you go, yeah, okay. So the economy in space must be much larger than the economy on Earth over enough time. Eventually,
The economy is dependent is dependent on markets. Rocket fuel isn't kerosene; it's cash. So what you're out there, who's paying for it?
right, who are you selling it to?
Yeah.
Bring it back, right? Yeah. And then that's when things start to get a little bit more fuzzy. And oh, yeah, asteroid mining. Wow. Okay. So yeah,
Well, I mean, so
get all
I
these
looked
resources.
at that, and that I think I'm skeptical of this, but I think um, smart people that know what they're talking about, that I trust, tell me in certain cases you get the right asteroid and the right everything, and it all works out really well. And if you own that asteroid, you can probably do well. The question I have is, if you just kind of look at asteroids in general, this is a long digression, and I really do have to go. So maybe it's another conversation, but it just the amount of money it takes to actually put something on an asteroid or brings the asteroid back is pretty mind-boggling, and that's a tough one. I think the moon is a lot easier. It's always there. You always know what to do with it. The chance appearance of an asteroid. There may be one company that gets on an asteroid and is able to do something with it, but those are going to be like really, really exceptional conditions, and how many times you can repeat that is an open question.
Great. Well, yeah, we're almost up here at the top of the hour. I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate your grounded perspective. I wouldn't say you're skeptical, it's just you're a realist on a lot of these issues, and I really appreciate that. It's not so much pie in the sky, but I feel like you speak from experience and having gone through a lifetime in the space industry. So I really appreciate your perspective, and
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'll hand it over to Ryan here. Ryan, I don't know if you can join us, or we're in StreamYard, which is a new platform. So Ryan's really the master here.
Yeah. Thank you both. Thank you to both of you guys. Yeah, we'll just take you guys off the StreamYard here, and we'll switch back over into Discord. But thank you again, Andy.
Great talking with you, Pablo. Anytime.
Yep. Great talking to you too. Bye.
Second there, and I had to refresh it. Hang on, I'm actually getting some feedback here too. There we go. Okay. Cool. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that convo. I thought it was super interesting between Andy and Pablo. We've got some more cool guests lined up here in the future. And if you know anyone too that would like to come and speak to MoonDAO and converse about these sorts of things, obviously let us know. Yeah, I guess we had some people having it drop, but okay, we're gonna shift gears here and do project proposals. We have one project proposal up for presentation this week, which is the Space Art Rocket project in Brazil. I'd like to invite Anastasia and Julio to come up on stage if they are still available. Anastasia, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Hey, good to see you. Hey,
How are
Julio,
you?
how are you?
Yes, but I see. Can you listen to me?
Hear you? Can see you? Both of you? Cool. Oh, you got your shirt. All right, cool. I got my shirt on too. We match in color.
Not yet. Not yet.
We got to get you. We got to get you this shirt. But cool. Yeah, so you guys have the proposal. I think this is the first time that you're presenting a proposal, but if one of you could share the screen to the proposal on MoonDAO's website, and you can just kind of walk through what the proposal entails, what the objectives are, budget, all those sorts of things. And obviously, if there's any questions from members of the Senate, we'll switch to that at the end.
Okay. So I need to talk about it, right? Or how?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay,
You'll
cool.
talk about it if you can share the proposal too, or I can pull it up on screen too. Or if one of you could share the proposal as we walk through
Yeah.
it, that'd be great.
Okay. Can I share it like in PDF, or you want to share it through MoonDAO submission website?
I don't know if anything changed on the PDF, but if you can share it from the website, that would be best, just to ensure we're running with the latest update here.
I think it will take me more time than for you.
Okay, let me.
Sorry, I'm so new with this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you could start walking through it, and I'll pull it up here while you're talking, and then you can obviously tell me to roll around.
Yeah,
But
and also I wanted to share the presentation that I had about the Unity project and what we had. Yeah,
okay.
experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to pull that up too. But go ahead.
Okay. So Julia and I, we've been talking to invite MoonDAO and Ayman Jahangir to our art rocket project in Brazil. We are doing it together with Unity Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization in Russia that has the psychological support through space for cancer patients, especially for the kids. What they usually do is they travel around Russia, around the world, with cosmonauts, with their artists, and they go to the hospitals where we bring everything that for kids to draw on. And so together with the kids and a cosmonaut, we talk about space, we draw their dreams. Usually, of course, we have this legend that if your dream gets to space, it will become true. And of course, kids draw their dreams to become healthy and to inspired and to just stop thinking about, hospital and cancer, and to just, really think about something more positive and about the hope. And so it started first when they were drawing on special material. And this material was covered on the spacesuit or land spacesuit, and it was on International Space Station. So we literally sent their dreams to space. Then we had 2 satellites with their drawings, because we have so many kids every year, every month, and more dreams and drawings. And now we have a big project with Roscosmos to cover the rocket with the dreams from all over the world. So last year we went to Bolivia, and we spent there 2 weeks, visited 5 different cities, many hospitals, also gave a talk at universities. So it's not only cancer patients, but also young people that dream about space. Yeah, if I can share, you let me know, Ryan, if I can, whatever I think this talk should be followed by the presentation, right, of the Unity.
Okay,
That will be good.
I can share this tab instead. Just let me know where you
Yeah,
want to go.
great. Thank you. Yeah, just, yes, keep scrolling down, I think to the part where there is a Bolivia. Yeah, so it's also uploaded to the, there is a hyperlink in the submission, so you can also have a closer look. Yeah, you can scroll down. Thank you. Yeah, I am wearing here not the cosmonaut uniform, but it's my uniform from isolation. Kids love to see the costumes, so yeah. I think I still can get into this costume if we are talking about the trip to Brazil. Yeah, you can scroll down just to see. So in Bolivia, it was like the major event, because we've been meeting with the governors of different cities and for the country itself, it was a really big event. So media was covering us. Like I think every media in Bolivia was writing about this project and what we are doing for these 2 weeks in the country. So it came even to the point when we were walking on a street. After 1 week, people were recognizing us and like showing the newspapers that there's already our pictures. So in terms of visibility, in terms of that so many people will find out about MoonDAO and Ayman's mission, I think it's really great thing to do. So what happened, like after Bolivia, we of course wanted to go to more countries, and we talked to Julia about going to the Brazil. Julia was great to help us to connect with hospitals, especially in Natal, with universities, and so we are offering. You can scroll down. Sorry. Yeah, I think there's and down to the Brazilian part. Yeah. Thank you. We decided that now we have Ayman, we have MoonDAO, and Ayman is oncology cardiologist physician, right? So I think it's right down his alley to join us, and it will be amazing to show this, that we have a Russian Space Agency representative, we have a cosmonaut with us, we have nonprofit as Unity, we have the private, like MoonDAO, private sector, all, I don't know, are you guys private? You're not private and not government, so it's kind of a mix because you're DAO, right? So, yeah, and we have a private astronaut, Ayman, who is also an oncologist, and we never had anything like that before, and we thought that it would be amazing to join our forces. And we have Julio with his amazing work in Brazil, especially if we're talking about Habitat Mars and what he's doing for young generation in Brazil to dream about Mars and space. So it's like so many things, amazing things could combine in this project. And to, invite more Brazilians to join community of MoonDAO to really propose their beautiful, interesting, talented ideas here. Maybe they don't even know they can do that. And I think it will be great. So we are planning to travel into 3 cities over the 2 weeks approximately in the beginning of September. So here we are really depending on the Ayman schedule. And for now, if this proposal would be approved, we are planning to travel from September 6th until September 13th for Ayman. But MoonDAO representative like Ryan or Pablo or anyone who will come with us, we will stay until 19. And we go to the Rio de Janeiro, Natal, and Brasilia. So in Rio de Janeiro is the biggest planetarium in the world. And we have also great hospitals there and some connections. We're working on it now. In Natal, Natal and Brasilia, Julio can talk about the program there. Julio?
Okay. Yes. Thanks for the audience today. We also wrote some points. We are planning for like the week. Sunday, 7th of September is a national holiday in Brazil, and starting Monday, from Monday to Tuesday we'll be having activities in Brasilia. Is the capital of Brazil. Activities like hospital visits, also Russian embassy visited too, and also University of Brasilia, like a forum, astronauts forum in University of Brasilia. Yes, and also and we'll be visiting the office of Brazilian Space Agency, AEB. These are some activities that will be spread for Monday and Tuesday, 8th and 9th of September. And we'll be flying to Natal during the evening of Tuesday or maybe during the morning of Wednesday. And during Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday will be happening activities in Natal. Also, we are planning the visits of colleges, college hospitals, and also one astronaut forum in the University of Federal of Rio Grande do Norte State, and also like a short space analog mission in Habitat Marte. We also will be like one of the sites for world biggest analog. And this will be like a short mission, like 24 hours, but will be good for about to have a moment of creativity and fun here. Yes, these probably will consume like these 5 busy days, and also for Saturday, we are planning during the morning. We are planning a cleanup beach in the also like a environmental activity. Probably this will be the activities, and also Anastasia and Unity Group commented about next week BRICS event happening in Foz do Iguaçu, and probably they will travel from Natal to Foz do Iguaçu to participate in this academic and about innovation event.
Thank you. Yeah, we are still planning. It's still tentative, all the plans, because it depends if Ayman is coming or not, and so we will work around that. But there is ongoing conversations with different government representative in Brazil and in Brazil in general, and with different media, and yeah, so we use all the resources that we can to organize the best coverage of this trip and the project itself, and to have as many meetings and cooperations as possible.
Yeah, only to complement from two Russian participants. Would you mention again, Anastasia, the name of the cosmonaut from
Yeah,
Russia?
can you? Yeah, Ryan, can you scroll down? There is a yeah, you can see it here. Grebionkin.
Yeah, and from the Russian side, they just have funding for this activity in Brazil, but the funding or the project will be to fund the participants traveling and working the project from US. In this case, yes, and this is also Ayman will be coming to Brazil with this funding.
Yeah, and also as part of cooperation with MoonDAO, Unity proposed to raffle one spot for the Soyuz rocket launch on November 25 at Baikonur. They will be covering the flight to Baikonur and staying there 3 to 5 days at the hotel, food, and also the program itself. So I think it will be also great for MoonDAO to later on, if we do this project, to raffle it or to do any kind of competition or something like that for people who wants to see the real Soyuz rocket launch. I haven't been there even myself. I was like, can I come? So, but they told me no, it's only for non-Russians. So yeah, if you have questions, please let me know.
Could you just dive in directly to what kind of budget you're requesting? Well, in ETH and USD, but what does that include? Yeah, what are the kind of the deliverables or whatnot that you would propose to the MoonDAO community directly for those funds, if you could?
Yes, let me open.
The high costs are the flights, the flights from US and yes.
I think we can also open the submission right now, like we done with presentation, and to the see. There is no like in details, but I couldn't find where to put the budget. There was like a budget button, but it was all about the crypto, so I was confused. But yeah, So the main cost, of course, is for the flight. So round trip flight from US to Brazil is like around 1,200 to 1,500. And then the accommodation will be around 700. It depends what type of hotel we'll choose, but yeah, I'm sure we can easily fit into that. I'm talking about all that per person. And then per diem, which is like $50 per day. So we will request to fund this spending for Ayman Jahangir, one of the MoonDAO representative. It can be you will decide, of course. Brian, Pablo, Michi, Phil, whoever. And for travel for me, since I will be coordinating all this project and also will be giving a talk about how I got involved in MoonDAO, about how I won the zero-G flight, how it changed my life, basically, because I now have a job that really was that I was able to get after my zero-G flight. So that's really interesting thing that happened. And also for our media specialist, because he will be doing all these promotional videos for social media, of course, for the MoonDAO. And the plan is to have the several videos about Ayman in Brazil and his path, about the workshop itself, about the MoonDAO mission, and all the interactions, also behind the scenes, what is happening during the Brazilian trip, and it will be focusing on the MoonDAO. And yeah, so that's all the expenses we have. It's around $12,000. We have plus 2,000 just for unforeseen emergency expenses. I hope we're not gonna use it. And of course, all the unused money will go back. So in total, it's around $15,000. I don't know if I should say it in the cryptocurrency.
Yeah, we fund in ETH though, generally, but yeah, that was changed after submission just to reflect the new kind of rates for ETH. So 5 ETH right now is somewhere over $15,000 USD, and then that can be swapped out. I guess would these be reimbursements or upfront funding for people that are traveling, or how would the per diems and whatnot, those sorts of things, be handled?
Per diems, I think. I mean, I don't know how you guys usually operate. So because I'm like, it's so new for me, this whole process.
It's mute, Ryan.
Yeah, we don't hear you. Oh, we lost Ryan. Okay, so I will scroll down to the deliverables. Okay, still don't hear you. No.
Is my audio working here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I can try to fill in here a little bit for Ryan while he figures out the audio thing. Ryan is both streaming and then also like helping here, so he's like managing multiple different audio interfaces. So yeah, it's tricky. But to answer your question, so yeah, in the past, we've done either stipends where people are reimbursed for a portion of travel, or we'll have just people, fill out their expenses and then get reimbursed at the end for whatever travel expenses they had. So Either model works fine, but yeah, I guess if people are being paid up front, maybe sometimes their costs go over the stipend amount, and so that can be tricky at times. So reimbursements tend to be simpler because then you know exactly how much it costs and you can reimburse them fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. So if we're in this Ethereum and the rate changes, right? But we said that we confirm we give you like 5 Ethereum, right? But then if it changes, how does this work?
We oftentimes recommend that teams once they receive the Ethereum, swap it for a stable coin immediately. So in that way they're not at risk with that. So that makes it easy. And then at that point it'll be pegged to US dollars, and then you don't have to deal with the volatility. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can guide you guys through that process. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so I didn't talk about the deliverables yet. So okay. So we're planning to hold around 12 art therapy workshops in Natal, Brasilia, and Rio de Janeiro, or maybe Iguazu. So we're still deciding if we would join the BRICS. And of course, if we are going there, then we'll do the therapy sessions there. But yeah, we want to have. Yeah, we want to have. I can hear myself. I can hear. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, and share MoonDAO's story through the media coverage, which I showed the example before from Bolivia that it was like #1 event in the country, and we had like millions of audience watching what we are doing. We are hoping to do the same for Brazil. And through our outreach and through our talks and at universities and maybe at planetarium, we're still discussing about that. And through the workshops, we are hoping to welcome at least 50 new MoonDAO citizens. So that's also the goal. And it's like minimum number. We hope to have more people joining MoonDAO community. And I think it also will depend on who comes from MoonDAO side, how convincing, and because we'll be talking about the mission. But I will be also there, of course, to represent not only Unity as ambassador, but also MoonDAO, because I kind of feel like I'm also ambassador of MoonDAO. And we'll secure the spot on Soyuz Art rocket launch. So that's already confirmed with Roscosmos and with Unity. They're really happy to invite foreigners to this launch. We will provide around 10 to 15 short videos for the social media for the MoonDAO to use, and also one longer video. We're still thinking, I guess, like 10 minutes is maximum because of the short span of the concentration span of people who are now watching the social media. But we can all discuss that with, of course, MoonDAO. What would you mostly want to see? But for now, the plan is workshop highlights, 5 videos, Amon story, around 3 videos, all short videos for the social media, behind the scenes, 4 videos, and call to action videos. Basically, we'll be inviting everyone who's watching it to join MoonDAO's community, and also if we decide to join the raffle for the Soyuz Art rocket launch lot prize. Yeah, so I think that's it. No, we cannot hear you. Maybe if you stop sharing, who knows, or like streaming live, we can hear you. Now your headphones are off, the sign.
Hear me now?
There we go.
Now we hear.
Technical difficulties, man. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience too. Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's no more questions from our senators or from the audience here, the next step in the process will be for the proposal to go up for a temp check vote from our senators. So I just tagged the senators here. They can go to the thread, obviously review the proposal in more detail and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If they think it should go up for vote to the member house, it would go up to the member house for a vote for 5 days. So basically it would have a yes or no vote by next Tuesday, Tuesday afternoon in the US. And obviously we can take it from there. Anastasia and Julia, you guys should be, attentive to any comments or questions in the proposal thread. If anything comes up, I saw there were a few questions and dialogues. Glad to see, some answers there. But
Yeah, the budget is also there. It's the hyperlink for that. I don't know why I cannot attach any files in this thread, but we found a way.
Okay, you could take a screenshot too of the detailed budget proposal and add that in, or perhaps edit. Mitch, you can confirm, but maybe edit the proposal and find a way to include the detailed budget proposal in there. But yeah, it'd be good to share that in some way.
Yeah, let me know how I can edit my proposal, because I couldn't. There was no button for me to edit it. So when I submitted, that's why I couldn't change the price. There was before 7.5 Ethereum, which is because I had the exchange rate 2,000. So now it's 3,000. So we get to 5 then.
Well, yeah, I think Mitch, you got that all fixed. So obviously, Mitch, you can either help with the edits directly, or Mitch is in the chat saying you can help. So we'll figure it out. But just any questions and whatnot, be attentive to those in the project proposal thread, I guess, over the weekend.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm not sure if this was answered before, so it's just I want to confirm. Can Iman definitely make it on those dates? Has he confirmed that he'll absolutely be there? Okay, great.
Yes, we talked to him. He said that he can make it from September 6 to 13. So. And that's why we moved a bit our schedule, because before we had September 1st when we arrived to Brazil. Now we moved it so Ayman can make it for the most part. We still will stay 4 more days after he leaves and continue doing other program, but at least he can visit 2 cities and do most of work.
Yeah. Also, we are considering this budget one participant from MoonDAO or Paul or Ryan. It's just in the budget, but if possible, be both. Is also welcome. You are very welcome to Brazil. Travel to Brazil. I believe we have a good time here.
I've never been to Brazil, but I've been wanting to go for a very, very long time. So that'd be very exciting.
Yeah. Natal is more touristic, but Brazil is like a modern architecture, and both cities are interesting to visit, and also different activities. Also, there is a planetarium in Brazil that would be interesting, and also have you Paul and Ryan as part of the crew in all our forums, astronauts forum that you are designing. You both, or one of you, will be speakers too, and will be included in the program also to talk more about MoonDAO and about space sustainability, astronauts activities, and how this would be promoted and engage the audience. That would be university students or fundamental or high school students.
Yeah, that's it's you guys included, of course, among the astronauts, cosmonauts, to give a talk about the important mission that you're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Great. I don't have any other questions. I don't know, Ryan, if there's anything else that
Cool. No.
Yeah, and I think it depends if we get approved, then I guess we can talk to the network of MoonDAO, because I know that there are several people from Brazil. So we can also, maybe interact with them and decide what we can do together when we are there.
That'd be great. Yeah, we have a few folks in Brazil that are involved as citizens. Elliot here in the audience too. But yeah, that sounds great. So looks like there's no more questions, but we can once that goes through temperature check, we'll get that. Sorry, I'm hearing myself too. But once it goes through temperature check, yeah, it'll go up for a vote, and yeah, we'll take things from there next week, I guess. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for all the support. Thanks.
Thanks, Anastasia. Thanks, Julia.
Cool. I guess real quickly, we'll probably dive into it next week, but just a couple quick updates. The Constitution votes were both approved by MoonDAO voters in the member house. So those changes have already been merged into our docs repo. So you can review all the changes there. And also, we're just finishing up the calculations for the retroactive rewards. Thank you, everyone who voted and participated in the distribution of retroactive rewards to the projects that were completed last quarter. We're basically done, just finishing up, making sure everything's, double checking all the numbers, making sure all the calculations are good. And we should have an announcement shortly about individual distributions to each project and to all of the contributors who participated last quarter in the community circle. Another news, next week we'll be joined by Hoyt Davidson for a talk like today with Andy Aldrin, which was super cool. Please do RSVP, in Luma, join us, bring your questions. Hoyt is an executive VP of the National Space Society and also the founder of Near Earth LLC, which is an investment banking, a leading investment bank in the commercial space sector. So it'll be cool to talk to him about some of the investments and financial tools that he sees as being important to our off-world expansion. Yeah.
Yeah, Hoyt is a great person, really, really thoughtful, very interesting. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation next week. Highly recommend you guys tune in. Yeah.
Yeah, just shared the link to the Luma there too, so you can RSVP and get the reminders there directly. But yeah, and next week we should share more details about the actual distributions. Once we have that, I'll also go up an announcement, I'm sure. But cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this week. We're went a little bit long, an hour and a half, but cool proposal, cool conversation with Andy, and looking forward to seeing everybody again next week, same time, same place.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
All right. See ya. Thanks, Pablo.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to MoonDAO, a revolutionary governance model and mission-oriented community that's reshaping collaboration in the space industry. Our mission is to create a self-sustaining, self-governing settlement on the moon to act as a launch point into the cosmos. MoonDAO is governed like a nation, with its own economy, constitution, voting system, treasury, elections, and senate, but internet native, and so without the limitations of geography. In 2022, we sent our first member to space, showcasing our model's capacity for real-world impact. Now, we're implementing key solutions for global collaboration in the space industry. We offer a borderless, permissionless platform that enables everyday people to participate in the future of space development and exploration. Be part of our lunar legacy and join the MoonDAO movement today.